Welcome back. Let's continue from our last video. Previously, you saw Arabella and Claire make a spectacular entrance into the Grand Hall, one using teleportation magic and the other arriving on a powerful wyvern. As rivals, they are locked in a fierce competition, each determined to outshine the other. Despite their rivalry, they both take a moment to wish Dane a very happy birthday. Arabella, smiling brightly, handed over her gift, and Claire followed suit, offering her own present as well. Seeing the unexpected arrival of both sisters, Dane felt a bit awkward, thanking them both for coming all the way there to celebrate his birthday, trying to hide his discomfort, saying of course they had to come. The celebration continued as Arabella, her eyes sparkling with anticipation, told Dane with a cheerful tone that it was time to open his gift, assuring him that he would surely like it. Their father Arkin watched the heartwarming scene unfold between his two daughters and his youngest son. A wave of emotion washed over him, bringing him close to tears. He playfully grumbled, reminding them how they had only given him a letter for his own birthday, yet they had prepared such thoughtful gifts for their little brother. His wife chuckled softly beside him, finding his light-hearted complaint amusing. Dane, turning his attention back to the present from Arabella, carefully unwrapped it. Inside he discovered a ring, but something about its design immediately struck him as unusual. He looked up at Arabella, a curious expression on his face, and wondered aloud if it was a spatial ring, noting its peculiar craftsmanship. Arabella, a proud smile gracing her lips, confirmed his suspicion. She explained that she had designed it herself, imbuing it with advanced spatial magic, though she humbly added that her professor had provided assistance in its creation. Dane was genuinely impressed, voicing his amazement at the difficulty of imbuing spatial magic into an object and the even greater feat of making it withstand such intricate enchantments. The more he considered it, the more he marveled at his sister's skill, expressing his sincere gratitude. Noticing his admiration, Arabella gently took the ring from him and asked for his hand. She explained that she would put it on for him, and with a touch of pride in her voice revealed that she had embedded his genetic code into it, ensuring that only he could use it, emphasizing that it was a one-of-a-kind item. Meanwhile, Lady Lily, who had been within earshot, approached to get a closer look at the ring. She commented in awe, observing the mana wavelength and deducing that it was crafted from the highest-grade magic stone. Arabella eagerly elaborated, explaining that by channeling some mana into the ring, it would create a small pocket space, eliminating the need for Dane to constantly open and close his storage bag. She seemed truly delighted with her creation and eager to demonstrate its functionality. Hearing this, even the relatively naive Dane instantly grasped the immense value of the item he now held in his hand, realizing that such a treasure would typically only be used by high-ranking individuals on the battlefield like noble commanders or powerful mages. He stammered his thanks, his eyes wide with wonder as he gazed at the ring, admitting that he had never imagined owning something like it. However, the surprises were not yet over. As Dane began to channel mana into the ring, the space around his hand seemed to distort, as if a subspace was about to form. Arabella, her voice filled with astonishment, exclaimed, questioning if he was opening the subspace even faster than she had managed to. She declared him a true genius. Dane, even more amazed than before, could hardly believe what he was witnessing. He muttered about how incredible it was, never having thought he would be able to use something like this, let alone create a subspace so quickly. Arabella continued to praise him, suggesting that he must already be ready to handle mana cores and mana rings. Just then Claire, noticing the unfolding situation, quickly offered her own gift. She told Dane with a smile to open hers as well. Still in awe of the ring, Dane nodded and eagerly unwrapped the new present. Inside he found a strange monster egg. He examined it carefully, wondering what kind of egg it was. But before he could voice his question, Claire's expression changed, and she rushed to warn him to be careful, her voice growing serious as she revealed that it wasn't just any egg. She explained that it was a summoning egg, recounting how she had once tried summoning Decaron and this egg had appeared instead. She clarified that it was a different kind of entity, one that once summoned could exist forever in this world, unlike anything he had ever seen before. Dane's eyes widened with realization. Seeing that Dane understood the gravity of the gift, Claire gave him a reassuring pat on the shoulder. She confided that no one else knew about it, emphasizing that it was a secret just between them until it hatched. Dane nodded, a smile spreading across his face as he confirmed that he would keep it a secret. The weight of the gift, along with the responsibility it carried, now settled on his shoulders. Arabella, noticing Claire and Dane whispering to each other for quite some time, couldn't contain her curiosity any longer and called out, wanting to know what they were whispering about for so long. But Claire, undeterred by her sister's outburst, continued to give Dane instructions. She reminded him to channel mana into the egg once in the morning and once in the evening, so that it would recognize him as its master, admitting that she didn't know when it would hatch but assuring him that this was the best way to care for it. Dane nodded, eagerly promising that he would definitely do that. As the conversation continued, Lady Lily couldn't help but smile, observing the wonderful gifts. She remarked on how amazing the presents were, telling Dane that his sister's return was truly a blessing. Dane, feeling touched by her words, agreed, saying that it really was a blessing. At that moment, Arkin, the family patriarch, cleared his throat, reminding everyone that while he was happy to see his dear daughters, especially considering their change of plans, they should also greet their parents properly. Arabella, realizing her oversight, quickly turned to her father, expressing her apologies for being so focused on giving Dane his gift that she had forgotten to ask how he had been. Arkin replied with a smile, saying it was fine, and after taking a good look at both of his daughters, he commented that they both seemed to be doing well, having traveled a long way just to visit their younger brother, and suggested they should rest well. They both replied in unison, agreeing with their father. Meanwhile, Leah, watching the family reunion, couldn't entirely hide the hint of envy in her eyes. Dane, noticing her gaze, wondered if she was leaving now and why she looked so lonely. As time passed, the next morning Dane was wandering around when he encountered Count Bout, who appeared lost in thought. The Count mused to himself that she was even better than he had expected, exactly as anticipated from the best mage at the academy, truly a valuable talent. He also considered her a perfect match for his son, the best swordsman at the academy, envisioning the power their families would wield if they were to combine, a power that even the royal family would hesitate to challenge. He thought that no one would dare to interfere with his family or its heirs, and decided that it was time to bring up the engagement between their eldest children. In their conversation that day, Duke Bout suddenly stopped in his tracks, hearing the distant sounds of something unusual. He wondered what the noise was, questioning if someone was training so early in the morning. The one training, of course, was none other than Dane. Just after waking up, he had headed straight to the training ground to familiarize himself with his new weapon. The sound of his spear slicing through the air echoed throughout the room, and Duke Bout, hearing this, approached, surprised by the sight before him. He mused, observing Dane's movements, focus, and style, noting that he didn't move like a typical 7-year-old at all. Even his basic thrusts, Duke Bout thought, had the precision of someone well-trained, to the point where even seasoned soldiers could learn something from him. He found it hard to believe, recalling rumors of Dane showing incredible talents since he was just 1 year old, which he had dismissed as exaggerated stories. But his surprise didn't end there. As Duke Bout continued to observe, he noticed Dane's footwork and stance. He thought it resembled that of a swordsman, finding it unbelievable that Dane could have learned swordsmanship at such a young age. He turned his attention back to Dane, who after a few more martial movements retracted his spear, and spoke in a cold voice, telling the unseen observer that he didn't know who they were, but they had better show their face instead of hiding like a coward. Hearing Dane's voice, Duke Bout, who had been concealed in the shadows, was slightly startled, realizing he had been caught. More importantly, he recognized the movement he had just witnessed, feeling sure he had seen it before, though he couldn't immediately recall where. Duke Bout furrowed his brows, trying to remember, but quickly dismissed the thought and stepped into the training room, offering his apologies for unintentionally spying on Dane. Upon seeing the familiar face, Dane rushed over to greet him, introducing himself as Dane Sogres, the youngest son of the Sogres family, and addressing him as Sir Duke Bout Thermion. Duke Bout observed the look in Dane's eyes and silently acknowledged that this was no ordinary child. After a moment of thought, Duke Bout quickly continued, explaining that he had been so absorbed in watching the impressive training of the new stars of the Sogres family that morning that he had completely forgotten about Dane asking for his forgiveness. Dane shrugged as if it were no big deal, but in truth Duke Bout had only said that to be polite. He was amused when Dane actually responded to it, laughing lightly and taking the opportunity to observe Dane more carefully. He couldn't help but notice how the young boy didn't even flinch a little bit after training for such a long time, recalling that at Dane's age, he hadn't even developed a mana core. Then Duke Bout pointed at Dane's spear and commented on his excellent thrust, suggesting that he must have inherited Arkin's talent. He also mentioned that he had heard that Dane's father had put a lot of effort into preparing the spear for him. Dane smiled in response, expressing his gratitude that Duke Bout had noticed it, his behavior further increasing Duke Bout's respect for him. Duke Bout mused that even his own son, when he was alive, had possessed excellent skills and manners, but not to this level. This led Duke Bout to consider a marriage alliance with this family, specifically entertaining the idea of marrying his daughter to Dane. To initiate his plan, Duke Bout casually started the conversation, mentioning that his daughter Layla was also training with a sword, and being the same age, they could become good friends once Dane joined the academy. Dane smiled in reply, agreeing that he was sure they would get along. Duke Bout chuckled, liking Dane's straightforwardness, and then said that he had probably disturbed his training long enough and would take his leave. He turned as if to depart, but at that moment Duke Bout suddenly remembered something and turned back to ask Dane if he had ever practiced swordsmanship before. Hearing this question, Dane was internally startled, realizing that his habit had been exposed without him even noticing. He thought to himself that Duke Bout had surprisingly figured it out with just one look. Dane quickly changed his expression and replied that he had only read a few basic textbooks on swordsmanship, but had never actually practiced it, attempting to cover up his earlier movements. However, despite Dane's denial, Duke Bout still sensed something was off. He thought it strange, feeling like he sensed a pure battle spirit within Dane even as he stared intently at the boy's seemingly clueless face. Then, shaking his head, he dismissed his suspicion, thinking that there was no way that was possible, as Dane was just a kid after all. Having put his suspicions aside, Duke Bout decided to adjust his clothes, remarking that he had only intended to take a light stroll but had been out for so long. He then announced that it was time to say goodbye and told Dane he would see him later. Dane bowed to bid him farewell, wishing him a safe journey back. Before leaving, Duke Bout didn't forget to invite Dane to visit him in the capital, saying that he must return the hospitality he had received at the Count's castle, adding that he really liked him. Dane inwardly chuckling, wondering if Duke Bout remembered him as the one who had defeated him in his past life. Just thinking about it made him feel fired up, and he told himself that if he prepared slowly and step by step, he was sure he would be able to do it again. And after Duke Bout left, Dane continued to focus on his training, especially now that he had made up his mind to defeat Duke Bout. It wasn't until the butler Herman came to remind him that it was time to head back that Dane finally stopped for a moment. Hearing the reminder, Dane turned and asked Herman if he had been waiting for him the whole time. Herman calmly replied that it was his duty to quietly meet all his requests, handing Dane the towel in his hand. Dane thanked him, thinking that Herman's ability to approach him without him noticing suggested a talent for assassination or stealth. Dane took the towel and wiped the sweat from his face, then inquired about how things were going and if people were busy. Herman confirmed that everyone was quite busy preparing for the upcoming banquet, and that other nobles had already started arriving, as it was difficult for more than 30 noble families to arrive exactly on time. Dane agreed and then asked how his sisters were doing. Herman informed him that they had opened a teleportation gate and already gone to the academy, explaining that they had no other choice since the midterm exams were approaching. Dane expressed his disappointment but acknowledged that it couldn't be helped, suggesting they head back now. Herman nodded in agreement. Dane thought to himself that when he had some free time he should check out the gifts his sisters had given him. Time quickly passed, and after attending the banquet and greeting nobles from various families, Dane had to sneak out to the garden to relax for a bit. He found living the noble life to be quite tiring, noting that his schedule was even more packed than usual, especially since it was his birthday. He found some comfort in resting in the garden, admiring the skilled gardeners who maintained the serene space. He mused that the flowers in nature contained the most mana, as his eldest sister had told him, and decided to take advantage of the time to analyze the mana within them. Without much thought, Dane sat down in front of a cluster of flowers and slowly closed his eyes to sense them. He reflected on his training, noting that even with magic and summoning magic he hadn't made significant progress, and still wasn't sure which to focus on, lamenting that having too many talents could sometimes be troublesome. Just then a light breeze suddenly appeared from his palm, scattering the flower petals around him. He marveled at the strong and fierce flow of mana within such a small flower, realizing that if someone could sense the mana in nature and convert it into their own, it would stay within their body, forming a layer of magic. He recognized that his body's mana attraction was truly incredible, allowing him to perceive things that others could only sense with their sixth sense. At that moment, with just a slight sensation, the surrounding mana actively entered his body, as if it were a whale taking in water. Feeling the flow of energy coursing through him, Dane's eyes lit up with excitement, realizing that he could now feel the mana more and more clearly, whereas before he could only sense it vaguely. Moving to another corner of the garden, two boys were engaged in conversation. One, with brown hair, expressed his boredom, complaining that as soon as they had arrived, his father had become busy talking to other nobles, pushing them aside. He suggested they simply show their faces and then return to their rooms to rest, as they had done in the past, using a stick to smash the flowers around him, which made his younger brother worry. The younger boy asked if they could do that, to which the older brother angrily retorted, questioning what he was talking about and reminding him that it was not technically their birthday, so who cared about such things. He wondered if the young master of the Sogres family would even notice. He then grumbled about getting lost again, questioning why they had built such a large garden. As they were talking, they noticed Dane's figure ahead. The younger brother pointed him out, and the older brother, putting on an arrogant expression, called out to Dane, asking if he was lost like they were. He addressed Dane in a condescending tone, referring to his outfit and demanding to be taken to the exit, assuming Dane was a servant. This caused Dane to turn around, and as soon as he saw the two of them trampling the flower beds, he rushed over and shouted at them to get off, asking if they didn't see what they were stepping on. Seeing Dane suddenly become irritated, the older boy responded in confusion, wondering why this brat was yelling at them just for stepping on a few blades of grass. Without answering, Dane turned around and retorted, asking why they hadn't stayed on the path instead of walking on the flowers and ruining them. The older boy, finding Dane small but mouthy, began to threaten him, flaunting his status, completely unaware that he was arguing with the young master of the very family whose garden they were destroying. Naturally, Dane, with his own status, wouldn't back down from anyone and flatly stated that of course he knew who the boy was, an idiot ruining the flower bed, frowning at his arrogance. The boy, unable to handle the insult, immediately lunged forward, grabbing Dane by the collar and demanding to know who he thought he was talking to, proclaiming himself the son of Count Tyron, a guest at this castle. Hearing this, Dane quickly recognized the boy's identity. Count Tyron was the noble who had been captured after Dane defeated him on the battlefield, a noble widely considered utterly unpleasant, making Dane think that the boy was truly like his father. Not understanding Dane's thoughts, the bratty noble continued to try and intimidate him, asking if he had heard of the Tyron family, boasting of their fame in the capital and their ability to make someone like Dane disappear without a trace, warning him to watch how he spoke. Hearing this, Dane realized there was no point in further conversation. He looked at the boy with utter contempt, which only fueled the boy's anger. The boy, calling Dane a crazy common servant for daring to look at him like that, raised his fist, ready to strike. But Dane was faster. He used his head to ram straight into Tyron's nose, causing him to stagger and fall backward. The younger, red-haired brother, seeing this, ran up in panic, asking if his brother was okay. Turning toward the Tyron boy, he suddenly noticed something wet at his brother's mouth. He reached up and found blood pouring from his nose. The Tyron boy screamed like a rabid dog, declaring that his nose was bleeding and vowing to kill Dane, calling him a damn bastard. Dane merely smirked and challenged him to go ahead and try. That's a wrap. The story continues in my next video. Like and subscribe to stay notified.